America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and you are watching this week's edition of the Funky Academic, or the Black Athenians. And I am the Funky Academic. Matthew's going to put my name down here for you guys to give. I'm going to give people a little bit of time to file in, because today we're going to talk about political accountability and how hard it is to keep our candidates accountable and our political officers accountable. And Black people, we need this especially because we're in a position where we need our rights secured by the government in an explicit way, in the way that other people don't, because they've implicitly baked it into the system of America. So we need good government. And we are also positioned in a way that we don't get the government we need because we don't control enough of the ideas in our community. Not just the capital, but I'm talking about the production of ideas, because like I said before, real power is in production, not consumption. And this includes the production and distribution of ideas. We're going to talk about keeping our candidates accountable after we hit the intro. Matthew, give it to me.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and it can feature in your front.
All right, America. So we're going to talk about keeping our political candidates and elected officers accountable, and the puzzle that puts on the Black community. Because there was a recent report that reminded us of the Kerner Commission. Now, the Kerner Commission was convened in 1968 after Black people were burning down many of the cities in these United States, and it was a little bit of steam control. They're like, these Black people, these Negroes are upset. So what are we going to do? We're going to convene a commission and figure out their situation. The Kerner Commission came together, and it turned out that the ghettos and the degraded conditions of Black America were really the fault of white America. What we've done is consolidate all of the risk and all of the failure in America and America's inability to do government well by its people, and consolidate in Black neighborhoods while giving white neighborhoods a holiday. For example, the FHA from 1935, when it was started, to 1968, it went past 68, but until 1968, 99% of the mortgages that it backed were for white families. And if a Black family tried to get that mortgage, they wouldn't be able to, because the entrance of a Black family in a white neighborhood was seen as socially unharmonious. So, in order to keep harmonious neighborhoods, the FHA would only back white homeowner candidates, right? So this also affected people who were coming back from the war in the GI Bill. It would only really work for these white suburban candidates. And also, what it allowed to do was allow the housing values in those racialized neighborhoods to appreciate housing value faster than other housing values in Black and mixed neighborhoods, right? So that's state-sponsored segregation that wouldn't have happened without the government intervention. So the FHA isn't necessarily bad. However, the way it was implemented was awful. All right. So Black people have complicated feelings about the New Deal. But you have to remember, the New Deal was both Roosevelt, who was also dicey because he was Woodrow Wilson, Secretary of Navy, and Woodrow Wilson was not a big fan of the Negro. He mass demoted all Black federal employees, in addition to spewing white supremacist rhetoric. So you got FDR, who was already a little bit dicey with respect to the Black community, making the Black community whole. But you have to remember that every single provision of the New Deal was run through a racialized Dixiecrat filter. The Democrats of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s were populists, but they were also white supremacists. So they were populists, but they were also white supremacists, which means that they were not good for Black people, either as a matter of populism or a matter of anti-Black racism. So all of the things that pretty much made the white middle class that came out of the 30s were purposefully coordinated to exclude Black people. For example, the unemployment benefits And unemployment benefits and even Social Security left out farm workers and domestic workers by the Dixiecrat design. And you know who are farm workers and domestic workers? Us, right? So at the time, 75% of the black workforce worked as either a farm worker or a domestic worker in the South, right? 60% nationwide. I'll say that again. 60% nationwide and 75% in the South worked as farm workers or domestic workers locked out of the New Deal, right? By design. So the New Deal was great for building white wealth, not so great for black wealth, and it did so often by exporting America's failure into black communities. For example, after the Civil War, what to do with the millions of black people was America's problem. It was America that created slavery, and it was an American problem to make the black communities and the black people whole. However, we moved America's problem into a black problem, right? You see how that was done? We concentrated America's problem into a black problem. So America's problem of inability to actually treat black people like humans, and we refigured as a black problem. Also, America's wealth that was generated in the cotton economy, and you have to understand that at the time, cotton was like oil. Cotton, everything was made out of cotton. Everything still, like, this is before synthetic fabrics. Cotton was what grew the economy. So the cotton economy that was run on black failure and the inability for America to make black people whole, all that wealth went to white people, right? So we concentrated the wealth of black exploitation in white communities and as a matter of white generational wealth, and we concentrated the poverty and the failure of America to make black communities whole into black communities. So it's a kind of a risk pool, right? So we know about risk pools insofar as we know about insurance, right? We want to pool the risk. That's why we put old people with young people and people with pre-existing conditions with otherwise healthy people all in the same pool, and then charge them all the same premium because it complicates the risk and lowers the risk for the people who seem to be at the most risk for bad things, right? So we pool the risk and charge everyone the same price, and that way we all seem to share a fate. America did not do that with the black political economy, did not do that with the housing market, did not do that with the black education market. Instead of pooling the risk and the degradation and the political responsibility and everyone taking their fair share, we concentrated America's inability to do well by black people and do fair by black people and its willingness to exploit black people in black neighborhoods. And we gave everybody else a holiday from. Not only that, we sponsored their holiday because they got the wealth from black exploitation. But we didn't, they got a holiday from that risk, from that responsibility, from that justice claim, right? So there are public policies that did this, that concentrated America's failure in black communities and gave everyone else a holiday while keeping the systems of exploitation. If you want to know where you dump your toxic waste, you do it in the black communities. If you want to know where to get cheap labor without actually having to honor the humans you're working with rights, you exploit black people, right? So we kept all the exploitation in the black community while giving the non-blacks a holiday from dealing with this political problem. So since politics made this political issue and made this exploitation and concretized this exploitation, it'll take a political solution to actually make this situation whole, right? That's all I want. I just want black people to be whole. And we have a hard time getting our politicians, some of them look like us, to actually advocate for us the way we need our advocacy, right? So, I mean, the paradigmatic example of this is the last president. We had a black president for 8 years. You might not have known. He was in all the papers. His name was Barack Obama. So people will say, Barack Obama couldn't have done anything with a Republican Congress. Now, this is true, right? This is true insofar as he had a Republican Congress and legislature from 2010 to 2016. However, that Republican Congress did not gag him. There was no banana in his mouth. There was no sock. Like he could have been advocating for us and preparing the way. And how do you advocate for people? Well, first of all, if you have a Republican Congress and you can't get anything passed anyway, spend your State of the Union making the case for reparations. You have, millions of people watching. Spend that State of the Union making the case for reparations. There was no gun to his head that said he could not advocate for us. Make the case. Use your microphone. If I can make the case in a YouTube video, you can make the case when you have the State of the Union. So what we want people to do when they have elected office, even if they're in a minority, and like I'm talking to a lot of people in Georgia right now, and they're like, well, you can't do much in the South if you're a Democrat or if you're black because the white supremacists run everything. You can use your microphone to create a new electorate. And I said this before, real political leaders create their electorates. I'll say it again. Real political leaders create their electorates. They don't pander to them, especially when you have an electorate problem. Right? So Obama could have spent the last 8 years explaining to Americans the case for making black people whole in these United States. He could have done that. He could have explained the role of government in people's lives so that the electorate was not so confused that they elected Donald Trump. Right? You don't have legislative power when you're not in power, like as an executive, but you still have the microphone. You still have access to the press. You can still make your case. Right? And this is important because the Democrats lost over 1,000 state legislator seats nationwide during Obama's reign. Mostly because I actually think his greatest skill was getting Barack Obama elected. That was his superpower. Like, that's what he did. He took his job to be getting Barack Obama elected, and he was very good about that. He did not take his job as explaining the case for adequate governance to American people. Right? And his failure to do that cost the Democrats 1,000 seats, and I want to say 13 governor's mansions. Right? Because people didn't know why to vote for the party that he was the titular head of. That's important. So how do we keep our political candidates and political officers accountable, especially black people? Well, with Obama, we were under the impression that it was our job to keep him comfortable, to make excuses for him. And I want to say that is never your job, electorate. When Trump doesn't get this wall built, his people are not going to make excuses for him. They're not going to give him, say, well, we had a lot of opposition from the DACA folks about building. No! That's not how they work. Trump, they're going to say, you promised a wall, you give me that wall. And Trump being a builder, he might actually deliver something like a wall. Like, there were mechanisms to keep him accountable in the way we did not have mechanisms to keep Barack Obama accountable. And that's unfortunate. And that's a complicated story. So I'm going to tell you what elected officers, if you're in the 10th district, and a lot of this video goes out to Athens and the Athens area, and people who should be sharing this all over the world, because if it can work for Athens, it can work for everyone else. So I'm going to give you a few of the excuses that politicians give for not being held accountable. And I want to tell you the stakes. For black people, understand the stakes of this. The New York Post just released an analysis of a study. You should go and read the initial study. I'll put it on my website later. But give me the 50 years, right? So the Kerner Commission was convened 50 years ago to actually decide why it is that black people don't own anything or have anything or are incarcerated so much and the home ownership rates are low and unemployability is an issue. And 50 years has passed, and the Kerner Commission decided that the conditions of black life were directly the fault of white supremacist policies. So this is when you got, on the strength of this commission, this is when you got the FHA finally lending money to black people and in neighborhoods with black people and stuff like that. So what you have is, it turns out in the last 50 years, where am I? In the last 50 years, we're not doing so hot. Education has gone up, but also means student debt has gone up. So great. We got more degrees that don't mean as much. But we all watch the Cosby Show in a different world, and we're convinced that if we went to Hillman and it was good debt and we'd be fine. But it turns out that it's just debt that can't be discharged actually through bankruptcy. And I think with student loans, they might even get you after you die. I don't know. Thankfully, I paid off all my student loans last year. Thank you very much. But I still believe in a loan holiday. I think that not a holiday, jubilee, just nix it out. A lot of black people who did absolutely the right thing are being, a lot of people in the United States who did absolutely the right thing was sold a bill of goods with respect to what education was going to mean in the job market. And that's a fodder. I will do a whole different show. I'm going to do an entirely different show on that because it's so important. The propaganda and the noose of student debt on the American economy. But I will say that black people, we got more degrees, but employability, home ownership, and incarceration. Incarceration is actually worse than it was in 1968. Have all not worked in our favor. So these are all policy problems, right? Employability, home ownership, incarceration. We are the same or worse, or relatively the same as we were in 1968. So why bother? These are policy problems. Why haven't we gotten the policies we need? First of all, let me just tell you the policies we need. There are only 3 real policies that are going to do anything for black America. A federal job guarantee at a fair wage. Baby bonds, which is a scheme to popularized by Sandy Darity and Derek Hamilton. William Darity is a professor at Duke in public policy. Derek Hamilton, you might know because he was a member of a very well-received town hall last week. He's an economics and urban policy professor at the New School. So baby bonds mimic the asset transfers that middle-class white people just kind of have in their lives, right? So the major asset transfers, like, for example, an inheritance, which is a huge asset transfer that just doesn't exist for black Americans because, 3 generations ago, we were sharecroppers and domestic help, like I said before. So inheritance, it'll just mimic the transfers of that are common in middle-class white life. And I'll tell you how the scheme would work. When you're born, they look at the wealth of your parents, and then they index a trust fund according to that wealth. So everyone gets a trust fund. Donald Trump's kids would get $5 in a trust fund per kid. And then, most of us would get significantly more. And then that would be dispersed at, intervals in your life. Once at 21, another one's at 35, another one's at 45. And the reason you do that is that because if you look at the economy, those wealth transfers that middle-class white people get, they're actually used to weaponized against black communities, right? Those wealth transfers are paying for segregation academies. Those wealth transfers are used to start businesses that then go and serve as predators on the black community. Those wealth transfers then end up being rolled into real estate development accounts where in black neighborhoods you see those signs, we buy those houses, we buy houses. That's not first generation money that's buying those houses. That's transferred, that's money that's been transferred a few generations. And as those wealth transferred, we need to mimic in order to actually participate in America. Right? So it's the equivalent of Social Security, except not for old people, for like entire communities. Because if you don't get something like those wealth transfers, those other wealth transfers are going to be used against you, right? Remember, inequality doesn't just mean that they have a lot and I have a little and that's fine. No, inequality means that they're going to use their lot to take everything you have, right? Inequality sets up predatory relations. So if you want to be free and you just don't want to be a tool, you need to actually deal with these inequalities. And the inequality in wealth transfers is one of those inequalities that baby bonds is set to remedy. Right? So you have baby bonds, a federal job guarantee, kind of like the WPA. Created 8 million jobs in the 30s, mostly for white people. And then reparations. If you're not talking about any of those three things, then you aren't really serious about making sure this number doesn't become, give me the other slide. Yeah. This. All right? The goal is that when they put me in the ground in 50 years, this isn't the header for the New York Post or the Washington Post. But make no mistake, without a political intervention, this will absolutely be the header for the Washington Post. So that's why I need you to do a few things, right? So I need you to share this video on your Facebook wall. I need you to tweet it out to all your people. I need you to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe. I want to get my subscriber numbers up. That's important. I want to try to keep this so that you could screen this in your class or at your book club and have a little discussion about what I'm saying. By the way, if you want any information about the FHA and the way the New Deal and disproportionately locked black people out of the economy but built the white middle class, there are two books. Mercer Baradaran's book, The Color of Money, just came out last year. It's actually excellent. It's excellent. It says it's about black banks, but really it's about the role of government in our lives and how the role of government has locked out black people from economic security. So Mercer Baradaran, The Color of Money, if you can find some sort of graphic for it, that'd be great. It is a great book. Also, When Affirmative Action Was White by Ira Katz-Nelson is another good book. It's a little bit less readable, but it goes through the moves in all of the appropriate ways. So, The Color of Money by Mercer Baradaran and Ira Katz-Nelson, When Affirmative Action Was White, all concern the role of government in building white wealth in America and locking out black people from building wealth and using the black populace to extract labor in order to build white wealth, right? That's a thing. These are all government policies codified by our government, and the goal is to make sure that the next Kerner Report, when they do the 100th anniversary of the Kerner Report in 2068, that it just doesn't read the same, because it will, without a political intervention. So, how do politicians get out of being accountable to actually making us whole? A few ways, right? So a few politicians run on everything except their ability to make black people whole and do justice by by our communities. They'll run on their experience. However, if you take the Kerner Commission or the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission seriously, anyone who's running on experience in the last 50 years should be running on an apology on how they have been inadequate in actually advocating for the quality of policies that will make us whole. All right? So if you're running on experience, even decades of experience, you should be running on an apology. Or you should have to account for why you screwed up and how you screwed up. So that's when I hear someone say, I had 10 years experience, I have 30 years experience. That means, no, unless you have more than 50 years of experience, you have not been part of the solution. And unless you've been advocating for policies that are different from the ones that have been passed in the last 50 years, you're actually part of the problem. So if you want to run on experience, you're going to have to tell me about all the ways we did it wrong. In Athens, Clarke County, that means you're going to have a fascinating story about city-county consolidation, on all the ways that black people lost political power through city and county consolidation. You're going to have a fascinating story about how the Olympic buildings were built, including the Classic Center in 1996 for the Olympics, yet black people were locked out of the wealth we were locked out of the wealth that the Olympics brought to Athens. And there's a funny story about the Classic Center, because I heard that actually that property was owned by black people. It was kind of eminent domain and given kind of a lowball deal to get it. And then they built the Classic Center for the Olympics and then gave the contract for catering. And the Classic Center is in a huge center. They gave the catering contract for the Classic Center to a white caterer, 15 years exclusive. So if you have a 15-year exclusive contract in a convention center the size of the Classic Center, that means not only do you have like just generational wealth, like you've shored up cousins and nephews, you've given your idiot cousins jobs during the summer because they can be waiters. You've like your friends who have dropped out for a while, like they now have jobs as like catering managers. Like you've shored up entire economies. And so this is a 15-year exclusive contract. What I could do with a 15-year exclusive contract to just about anything is fascinating. Like all the weddings and events and university events, like all of that. And since it's an exclusive contract, that means you set the price. So black people locked out of that wealth. But you know that the wealth that was exploited through that contract is now weaponized to like buy up black homes for pennies on a dollar and get black people out of Athens. So you have to understand that this inequality sets up predatory conditions, right? So unless you have a fascinating story about how you were on the scene or in power, but you let that happen, I'm going to need something more than your experience. And then you could say, and then another way that politicians try to get out of being accountable to people, because let me make no mistake, the goal for having an elected office is for someone you can get rid of when they don't do what you need done. If someone's running on a legacy where you can't get rid of them if they get elected, they're unfit for that office, like structurally, because part of that office means if you don't do what I need you to do or advocate for what I need you to advocate for, because I'm not gonna tell you that like any single politician can actually like muscle through the right legislation, but nobody stops them from advocating. So if you're not advocating for what I need you to advocate for, and I can't get rid of you, that's a problem right there. And that was a problem we had with Obama. Like you could not say, black people couldn't say anything bad about Obama. You couldn't say anything bad about Obama because like we were there to protect him. He had somehow conned us into thinking that our role as an electorate is to protect him as an elected official. That's not our role, man. That's not our job. Our job is to say, look, if you don't come through with if I don't see you advocating for the quality of policies that will make us whole, then I need someone else. And black people, we do have power within the Democratic Party to make sure that its representatives advocate for us. They might not have power getting the legislature through the current legislature, but they can advocate. And by advocating, you actually change the electorate. That's how you create a new electorate. So don't let any politician give you an excuse why they can't advocate in public. A lot of these people, I've heard so many elected officers and candidates saying like, well, I can't advocate for that stuff in public, but in private, I'm making deals happen. No. Black people, understand. That's like, have you ever dated a woman who said like, I want to go out with you, I want to hook up, but we can't do it in public. Like, I'm not going to hold your hand. This is a very junior high school. We're not going to do it in public. But like, secretly I'll come over and we're all right. I just can't do it in public. Yeah, so we're like the Democratic Party side piece. It's pretty much what it's pretty much what I'm saying. They like us. They like our company, but they don't want to advocate for us in public. And the problem is they'll get other black people to tell black people that that's okay. And that's the way it should be. That's a problem. You know where the power is because there is so much money in Negro control. The Democratic Party puts so much, and liberals in general, put so much money and time into telling black people why they can't advocate for themselves. If AIPAC or Jewish Americans were so averse to advocating for Israel the way black people are averse to advocating for themselves, like there would be no Israel. Like it would have imploded. But like if GLAAD was so standoffish about advocating for LGBT issues as black people are advocating for black people issues, there would be no gay wedding. There would be no gay marriage. It just wouldn't have happened. No, they know that they make it known, AIPAC and GLAAD make it known that either you stand with us publicly or we'll bounce you. But black people, they, hold on.
I was going to say, don't forget HRC.
HRC, yeah, the HRC. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about Hillary Rodham Clinton. I'm talking about the Human Rights Commission. Human Rights Campaign. Yeah, the Human Rights Campaign. Maybe you can do a whole nother show on that. Human Rights Campaign has got, you're scared of, a lot of it. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so the Human Rights Campaign is supposed to be about LGBT community issues, but it's about a certain class.
They only want to talk about the white ones.
They got big class issues. And if you know anything about LGBTQ life, you know that youth homelessness is a huge issue. But youth homelessness is a lot of it's people of color. And so the Human Rights Campaign kind of stays off of that and is too busy arguing for equal access to gyms. So I will tell you that black people, we need to go against the propaganda that says that we can't advocate for the quality of policies that will actually make us whole. And at this stage, like I said, there are really only three. You need to get moving on reparations, you need to get moving on baby bonds, you need to get moving on a federal job guarantee. And if the Democratic Party says to wait for any of these things and don't advocate for them in public, that party's your enemy. Right? So I don't need you to push these through as an individual candidate, but I do need you to advocate for them. I know you can't do it alone, but I need you making the argument everywhere you go and writing little op-eds in the local paper and when you're doing your interviews for public radio or private radio. I need you advocating. Nobody's keeping your mouth shut. That's not your Republican colleagues keeping your mouth shut. That's you. So I'm going to need you advocating. And let it be known that if you're not advocating for us, then you don't get our vote. And if the party pushes you towards someone who's not advocating for an issue that will actually impact the black community, that means the war should be against the Democratic Party. Right? So if the Democratic Party is telling you, no, we have to support the candidate who is not advocating for black people rather than the candidate who's advocating for black people, that means your problem is with the Democratic Party because they should be advocating for the candidate who's pushing the policies who are going to make black communities whole. So politicians will say, no, I don't need to advocate for black communities because I have experience. Or politicians will say, I don't need to advocate for policies that will support black communities because I know the neighborhood. I'm from the neighborhood. And this person's a carpetbagger, an interloper. And politicians will also say, I don't need to advocate for policies that support the black community because I know what it's like to grow up poor. And then, you'll get black politicians who say this too. I grew up poor, so I don't need to advocate for policies that will actually help the community. And you have to understand that with the numbers I'm looking for, you growing up poor and being there is no real middle class. So you being an outlier in the black middle class does not mean that you know how to uplift a community. What that means is you know how to escape. And so what you're telling me is that you're telling me I should ask an escaped convict how to end mass incarceration. Now, escaped convict can tell me a lot of things. An escaped convict can tell me how to break out of prison. They can tell, yeah, they got first-hand knowledge how to escape. They can tell me how to break out of prison. They can tell me how to pay off a guard for their individual come up. What they can't tell me how to do is end mass incarceration. They can tell me how to grease whatever wheels or do whatever they have to do. And some of you escaped Negroes have done some grimy things to climb out of poverty. But they cannot, so just the fact that you grew up poor and are now not, but everybody you went to high school is, that does not tell me you know how to uplift a community. That tells me you know how to escape. And that also might suggest to me that you know how to escape any political, shackles I'd like to put you on. So that makes you, you're going to have to tell a fascinating story about how you survived, but everybody else went down. Yet I'm supposed to trust you. So, I will say that also, another way politicians, how's people in chat? How many am I talking about? Like 80?
90.
90, good. Tell your friends, let's get these numbers up. So, another way politicians and candidates will try to get out of actually making the quality of commitments that we need in order for black communities to be whole is they will say, well, I help a lot of people individually. And like, we don't need more social workers. Actually, we do need more social workers. I just don't need you to elect them. We need elected officials who are going to advocate for the quality of budgets that will hire social workers to do those social workers. I'm not hiring people for to do case management. That's not your role as an elected official, as a legislator. I need you pushing for legislation, not case management. And that's a lot of people get that confused because they're like, well, blank and blank was a coach for my softball team. Blank and blank drives the church bus. Blank and blank helped me out when my son got a little trouble. I mean, that's fine, but I'm going to need you, is blank and blank advocating for a jobs bill? Are they advocating for baby bonds? Are they advocating for reparations? Are they advocating for community-wide solutions? Right? Because this business of using the office as a case management issue, that's some third world stuff. That's what you do when you have a failed state. When you have a failed state, and so policies don't get promoted and pushed and enacted, that's when the politicians are just like, well, I'm going to try to hook him up, that individual up with a job. Right? Like that's when politicians are used as like hookup artists. So that's a failed state. So what you're doing when candidates come to you and say like, well, I've done a lot of work individually, helping a lot of individuals, what they say is they're okay with America being a failed state relative to black people. Right? So that's important. So I hope you are paying attention to all this. All right, so what are the strategies people are going to use or candidates are going to use to get out of systems of accountability? First of all, they're not going to want debates. So be careful of anyone, I'll be honest, be careful of any candidate who won't go anywhere to debate. Right? If you're a political candidate, you should be able to show up anywhere as a matter of governance. Not somewhere fair, not someone impartial. You should be able, if you're a Democrat, you should be able to go to the Chamber of Commerce or to the the white frats. If they want to debate, you should be able to show up and go toe to toe. If you are ducking debates, or if any candidate is finding any reason at all to duck a debate, they're not going to be about Black life. They're not going to be about Black life. That's going to be the first clue that this person's actually not going to be about you. They're ducking debates. Because Black life is going to take a lot of advocacy in public. And if you're already trying to find a way around advocacy in public, you're not going to push the policies we need. Right? So be very wary of people who try to find any reason at all to duck a debate. These are not going to be your allies. Or they're going to want to try to turn, we don't need debates. We just need forums where, like, I give my stump speech and then sit down. No, debates are important because we need, in order for the quality of voter education we need to hear candidates rebut each other. Say, like, actually, this program won't work because of X, Y, and Z, or this program is good for A, B, and C, but it won't work for X, Y, and Z. We need the point-counterpoint to clarify, to do the work of voter education. So not just forums where everyone gives their stump speech. You need debates where candidates can actually respond to other candidates and say, like, what worked and what didn't work in what the candidate says. Because that's what we need if we're serious about building the quality of electorate. Because make no mistake, the goal of these elections are a means. Right? We live in a democracy. So elections are a means to create a better electorate. And even candidates themselves are a means to create a better electorate. So we need the candidates in the business of creating a better electorate. In the South especially, because what you believe, the current electorate is not all about muscling through the quality of policies we need to be whole, black people. So we need the quality of candidates who will advocate for it. And the way they advocate for it is in public. And we need to use these elections to get them to advocate for the quality of policies we need in public. And be willing to do it anywhere. Right? So that's how you change the electorate. People are, well, you have to say what you need to say to get elected. No, when Democrats do that, that's how the party slides right. Right? Democrats say whatever they need to say to get elected, they get elected, and then they need to get re-elected, so they find themselves cutting all these deals that don't include us in order to get re-elected, and it moves the entire party to the right. Because if you're not advocating before, you're not going to advocate after you get elected. You're too busy raising money and trying to get reelected. And that's like those two incentives have never been about black life because we don't have a lot of money. So they'll try to confuse symbolism for substance. This is important. They'll try to confuse symbolism for substance. Vote for me because I'll be the first black whatever. Vote for me because I'm the first whatever. No! During that last 50 years of the Kerner Council, there were a lot of first blacks. There are a lot of first blacks. I'd rather have the fifth white if that's the person who's advocating for the quality of policies I need. Like the first blacks are good for, it's good for an awards banquet, and it's good for like a wreath. But I don't need any more first blacks unless they're the first black who's advocating for black people. We don't need that. A lot of first blacks happened in the first 50 years. That's not the quality of policies that will get us better home ownership. That's not the quality of politics that will get us the home ownership, employment, or incarceration. Being the first black, anything is not going to do that. So we need to be suspicious of people pushing symbolism over substance. And like I said, I think Obama was perfect in this regard insofar as, like I said, La Raza was asking for immigration reform. GLAAD was asking for gay marriage. AIPAC was asking for support for Israel. And black people were asking for pictures of Michelle and Barack Obama. Like, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because we got sold symbolism because we don't think we deserve substance. We deserve substance. We're Americans. Like those pictures of Barack and Michelle doesn't substitute for policy, yet we were conned into believing that they did. And we were conned by a Democratic Party that controls our apparatus. And like, in some of my darker days, I wonder about the agency in black America insofar as we don't control the production and distribution of our ideas. That's why it's so important that you share this video around. And honestly, it's so important that you go to thefunkyacademic.com and kick in a little bit every month. Because the work I do here, I know for a fact now that I have an FBI file on me. So when, for a fact, visits have been made, I know for a fact that I have an FBI file on me. So when I get in jail, I'm going to need a legal defense fund. The best way to make sure that legal defense fund happens is going to funkyacademic.com, sign up for a monthly membership. Also, this show still doesn't quite pay for itself. It comes close. But like Matthew does a lot of my intern work and rent for the studio, and I want to build and I want to pay people. So like I want to do some more marketing. So if you want this to get out, go to thefunkyacademic.com and sign up for a monthly, $5, $15, $50. Some of you guys can pay $50. And look, this is money well spent because the truth I'm giving right now, the quality of political education, if I'm doing my job right with the next show saying why we should give like a student debt holiday, then like, you invest a little bit with me and then I'll like wipe out everyone's debt. Like, so like it's an investment. in the production of ideas, production and distribution of ideas, because a lot of this will go to marketing. Plus, I also want in Athens area, and maybe beyond, to have a hard newspaper go out, a hard newsletter, a monthly, which I think is very important. And that's going to take a lot of money to produce and distribute. So tell your friends to go to thefunkyacademic.com, sign up for a monthly donation, a membership, and I'll keep this going. All right? So candidates will try to sell you on symbolism rather than substance. 50 years, we had a lot of first blacks. That wasn't sufficient. That wasn't sufficient to actually push the policies that we needed. So, also, be very careful, and I mentioned this before, but I want to drive it home. Be very careful of electing. A lot of these first black candidates, they get there, and first candidates or whatever, first women, whatever, they're going to be really hard to remove. The ability to remove a candidate is as important as the ability to elect one. I'll say that again. The ability to remove a candidate is as important as the ability to elect one. So you want to only vote for someone you can get rid of if they become problematic. All right? That's very important. A lot of people will try to run on legacies, but it's hard to get rid of legacies. Yeah, what's up?
Can we also talk about the language that changes, such as candidates who start out, oh, now I know the language they use, so I can make deals with them.
Oh, yeah. We hear a lot about that. Okay, so we hear a lot about all right, so I know you have to vote for me because I'm not going to advocate in public, but I know how these people work and I can make deals with them because I know I speak their language. No, if they're not advocating for you in public, it's not going to work for you in private. Look, if you don't get this right, I'm going to start naming names of local politicians who've given me that exact line. And we're just going to have to hash this out. But if you hear that from anyone, they're not really about your life. Like I said, it's like you're their side piece. Like if they can't advocate for you in public, they're not holding your hand in public. That means they ain't really your girlfriend. You ain't together like that. They're not holding your hand in public.
You're not the one they're taking to the restaurant.
Right, no. So it's also, and I want to leave with driving home, that it's impossible. The candidates and politicians will say, one person can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. You're right. One person can't do this alone. However, nobody is stopping you from advocating. I'll say this again. Nobody is stopping you from advocating. Nobody's stopping the politician from advocating. Nobody's stopping the candidate from advocating. So if they use their inability to get it through as a reason not to advocate for the quality of citizenship we need, then they're no good. Because what we need to do is change the electorate, and you change the electorate by advocacy. Right? So I'm going to need the candidates and politicians to be advocating for black people in all of the media, because that's how you change the electorate. And then eventually, that's how you pass policy. And I want to say this is very important because since Barack Obama didn't advocate for the role of government in our lives, he didn't clarify it. That's not something he needed a Republican Congress to do. He did not clarify the role of government in our lives. That's why the Democrats lost so many seats. He could have spent his time clarifying and advocating for the role of government in our lives. Then the voters wouldn't be as confused about the role of government in our lives, and we'd have better governance. However, what I suspect was the bankers and the people who pay all of his after work, that keep the checks going in right now, don't want Americans to know about the role of government in our lives. They don't want us to know about how to redress the systems of exploitation. So in order to get the afterwork that Obama's getting right now, he had to keep mum about the levers of power when he had exclusive control over the microphone. All right, so in my black business, I'm going to go with the same black business, Marcus at Cheesecake-topia. Andrea, do you have that information on your phone? All right, so first of all, local black business, Cheesecake-topia. His name is Marcus what? Marcus Lawrence at Cheesecaketopia makes delicious cheesecakes. He's a black businessman trying to make his moves in Athens, and he's doing it with his lady friend. It's a beautiful thing. So if you're ever hungry, you could do it, like I said, like this could happen in any way. You could use it as a for your bar mitzvah, your quinceañera, your office party, or if you just want cheesecake, or if you just, like I said, if you just want cheesecake because it's Tuesday, go to Cheesecaketopia. And I'm going to get the numbers. You have the number right there? All right. You can call Marcus at 678-429-0304. That's Marcus and Yolanda at 678-429-0304. And it's delicious. Like, that's support a local black business, Cheesecaketopia. They'll do your office party. They'll do everything. And also, if you ever, what's up? They have a great Facebook page at Cheesecaketopia. All right, and also, if you ever need information about how to get more black businesses in your life, or if you're a black business and you need like marketing help and how to get hooked up with the wider community in Athens, Georgia, Enlightened Media Productions gives wonderful service. We're gonna go for a testimony right here. Come on, stand right here. Stand right here. A testimony about Enlightened Media Services. I'm gonna take this microphone off. You don't have to get a camera. Okay. All right, so you're starting your business, and what happened?
Yeah, so I'm a therapist, and I moved. Further. Okay, sorry. There, here, right here. Okay. I started a therapy practice here in Athens, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I was kind of like, what? Like, I don't know anything about the business side of what needs to happen, what needs to come together, and Broderick was recommended to me by you. And yeah, he just, in one meeting, we sat down, he literally helped me think through a business plan, what I needed to come up with for a website, like in one conversation, designed pretty much the logo, everything in one conversation, he pretty much like put together this whole package. It's going to help me with marketing. It's beautiful and wonderful. I would recommend it to everyone.
All right, so she's not just a supporter, she's a client of Enlightened Media Productions, and it hooked her up with her therapy business. So Broderick Flanagan over at Enlightened Media Productions, if you put any of that in the Google, you'll get it. Oh, is it really? We got the, okay. So it's www.enlightenedmediaproductions.com. First of all, Enlightened Media Productions makes all of this happen. None of this, you don't see this without Enlightened Media Productions, like this show. So also, I am a client of Enlightened Media Productions. So if you need more black businesses in your life, or if you're a business, if you're just like, a regular entrepreneur and you just need some business counseling, this is the guy. He'll get you plugged into Athens and the greater area. You'll sit down. Like I said, an audience member was opening a business. She was a therapist and she needed help. She came to Broderick with an idea and some plans, and they sat down, and now it's happening. So Enlightened Media Productions for your business needs, and also Cheesecaketopia for your cheesecake needs. All the needs. Black businesses and cheesecake. What more do you need in life? So with that, I think I'm going to call it. I think we've had a good show. Thank you for your time. And remember, don't let these people weasel out talking about their experience or talking about how much they know the neighborhood or how much they grew up poor. They need to talk about where we go from here in terms of policy or how many individual people they've helped. That's not like, I don't need caseworkers. I need elected officials. And also I need elected officials I can get rid of if they don't come right after in this iteration of the next election. And remember, they're also going to tell you that one person can't do it. They need the rest of their colleagues. Doesn't matter. One person can advocate. So don't let that be an excuse to let them off the hook from advocating. And with that, peace. See you next week.